Critical Role Campaign 4 Episode 3 is officially behind us, and I'm going to be providing you with a good quick recap of all the important things that happened amongst the players with a little bit of lore sprinkled in. I did have requests to have a little bit more of the lore in here that we learned, so I will be doing my best to try that, but the main priority here is going to be following the characters, what they did, and where they're going. If this kind of content interests you, make sure to click that subscription button, give this video a thumbs up, and leave a comment down below. But let's talk about episode 3. We open up with yet another cold open, this time with Tayor at the Candescent Creed, where he's talking to them about being a bodyguard, a member of sort of their protection unit, as he discussed in episode 2, and he's meeting with one of the heads of the guard, and then Felonius walks in, Felonius Halavar, and his 2 hounds. Wrath and Judgment. One of the key things to note here is that it was hinted at that these dogs had like a glow coming from the back of their throat, and there was almost like a noise, a sound, a song coming from them that would confuse spellcasters. That seems pretty powerful. I think we're gonna see more of them. He tries to say he wants to keep his garb. They insist that he should go get fitted with the proper Candescent Creed things, and ultimately he loses that fight and begins to head off towards the location they told him to go to with the pouch of coin that they told him to go with. Then we swap to Julian, who is going to look for Octus. He last saw Octus with Taisha, so he says, hey, I should probably go to Hal's house because that's where Taisha probably is, and therefore maybe Octus is there, or I can ask her about it. So he goes outside to head there, is passing through the market at the same time Tayor is. They run into each other. They recognize each other from the wake or the funeral. They, however, didn't speak there, so there's a little bit of small talk being like, hey, how's your family handling this, blah, 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 blah. And then Tayor, when Julian tries to walk away, is like, hey, I have allied myself with the Candescent Creed, so if you're looking for an ally, I might be able to help. Julian's like, yeah, okay, I gotta go. But before he goes, he notices and sees Tayor heading off towards this tailor being a front for people who basically remove problems for the Halavars. So he's very much aware that Tayor might be going to his doom. He's taking the pouch of gold given by the Candescent Creed and maybe going to basically walk into a trap where he will be killed. In Julian fashion, he goes, I don't care. He just keeps walking and does not go over there. Then we jump back to Wakander. Wakander, of course, in episode 2, ended with basically seeing this giant angel that's his grandfather, and they find out that that's kind of where his power is coming from, and we get way more into that in this episode. We also meet his sister Zabani, who shows up, a Tyranny's sister. We learn that that liquid is not really his blood, but just the light. It's a spit too. It's basically all the fluid in his body is essentially the light. We're talking about his grandfather, the 30-foot tall angel. Photark, Wick's grandmother, says, we did it to give people something to believe in, the light. She plays it very politics, and it is a masterclass on gaslighting. I mean, the whole section with her here is just gaslighting on gaslighting. We also learn that the grandfather's name is Atheon, servant of the sun. How this all came to be, no, she didn't sleep with him, but she basically found him, took some of his blood to use on a spell, a wish spell, to have a child. Boom, now we got her child, Goddard, who we then find out has wings, that when he spreads them out, they're kind of wrapped around him very tight. He frees them, and as he frees them, all of a sudden, boom, luminescent feathers, beautiful luminescent feathers. And that before this, they thought that all the light came from Thansel, but after, of course, all the gods were killed, they're like, oh no, but then they discovered that this light still exists in these feral celestials, and so now, well, they're using it. She goes on again, gaslighting about people need the light. Wick is like, yeah, we were doing it for the right reasons. And the Photark gives an absolutely amazing line about what you do if you can't get an empire.
If you can't be an empire, you take your licks, you pick yourself up, you dust yourself off, and you start a church or a merchant company, something.
She also goes on to explain that the whole creed is more so to like control others and get them to follow this sort of thing, that they bend and go around and don't really follow themselves, but it gives people something to follow and allows them to take more because of it. There's also mention of a romance that got away for Wick, but that he needs to forget about that because he needs to marry into the D'Antonios because they have access to some vineyards that have some sort of alchemical element that will allow them to dilute the filament and therefore have more production of it. Wick also asks about Tayor and what she meant by like she took care of him or he needed to, and she says, I got it, don't worry about it. And that this whole reason they're telling him is because he needs to know enough to stop believing, so he'll stop preaching these things to them and be like, oh, why are we doing this and why are we doing that, and questioning everything and reading the scripture to her basically. She also explains that his power comes from his blood, not poetry and prayer, which leans very heavily into the idea that he is in fact a divine soul sorcerer and his power comes from the liquid of a celestial. From there, there, Wick and Tyranny go up to get him a bath, and he basically just lets out at Tyranny, like, how did you keep this from me? Why didn't you tell me? And all that sort of stuff. She explains that yes, she knew, but that she just got a body 6 months ago and that she was hired, and the whole purpose that she's here is to just watch Wick. She's hired help. Wick is like, but you were doing so well. And she's like, hey, I can't be saved. I'm a demon. Stop. I cannot be saved, which I think we're going to get around to eventually, that she's going to be saved. But that's speculation. She says her boss is Kasha Aravi, who is the Prince of Demonkind in the Shadow of Suffering. And that his part in this is that in exchange for what they do, he is going to be getting filament and souls. They then decide that they can't let Tayor die. Witch says he doesn't forgive Tyranny, but he understands. Tyranny is also very sweet to him, and she's not like the other demons, and Tyranny really grows on me in these moments. Before they leave though, Sam, Wikander, notices a picture that is that same love from a previous time. He looks at it, takes it out, and stores it away to take with him. Then we jump to Murray, who is still in the office of the current dean of the School of Magic when Primus Taconis shows up. During this sort of conversation, which we'll dive into, we also learn of Thiazi's official crime that led to his execution. He was a criminal who attacked some Taconis guards in the market, and that's why he was put for execution. At least that's the cover story. Murray is very not treating him as if he's the head big bad guy of this strong family, and he doesn't like that. He's very much like, I will kill you on the spot, like literally.
If you continue to speak to me, I'm going to kill you where you stand.
Then Murray resists a curse, and it doesn't seem like it came from Primus. She, in response, tries to detect magic sneakily to determine whether or not, like, it's coming from him, but that is broken up by Ellippides, who basically spills something, Mist pops up, he shoots a counter spell, it goes off, and then he shoos Murray out the door. Then Murray overhears something, rolls an insight really badly, and thinks that her mentor, the dean, has traded on her. Other than that, we learn that the Taconis family is currently at the Obermist Manor, waiting to find out about Octus, because that's why he was here, is trying to find Octus. And Murray runs off to find Azune. Then we move over to Thimble's group, which is Cadigan and Octus and her, and we now get our first combat encounter, which does not go very well at the start for Thimble and company. They roll very poorly, things are not going well, but then luckily, Ashley Johnson, in an epic fashion, bursts through the window, starts just absolutely destroying people with a crit, and things turn around. They ultimately win that fight, and we learn some things. We learn that Casimir is essentially the clear culprit, and that he basically got it in really rough times, was taking some stuff off the top from his job that he was doing sort of with the Crow's Keepers, and owed them a lot of money, but then suddenly came in after Thiazi's death, handed them all the money he owed. Everybody was decked out in new armor. He had his own sort of crew of Crow's Keepers, and had a deed to an estate up north in Gormalay. While this was happening, Sid came in, this is Tayor's brother, realized what was happening. He was covered in sweat and was just like, you know, why weren't you there to save Thiazi? Like, something went wrong, that sort of ordeal. And then he runs off, he grabs the deed, Sid does, and runs away. Casimir and his crew chase after him, and that's the last they're seen. They decide to head back to Hal's because they want to find Tayor and let him know what's going on, that his brother wasn't involved. Before they leave though, Ashley gets a copy of the list of people that Casimir was on, like he was on a list of people who basically were set to be killed because of the fact that they had owed so much money. So the Crow's Keepers, that their life was going to be the price they pay. And this is where they take their break. When we come back, Hal is showing Taisha the hallowed ground. This is basically where they've turned it into a theater, a place that was once where they had to go and worship the orc god. They're now repurposing as a way for them to show the things that they enjoy, taking a place that was meant for performance and act for the god, and instead turning it into something that they enjoy themselves. During this scene, we get a lot of really beautiful moments between Taisha and their daughter, and kind of just emotional things like that. Really nice scenes to see, not a ton of like story progression sort of things, or at least doesn't seem that way, but just, you know, setting the tone for the sort of motherly daughterly bond, and the fact that, you know, Taisha left and she's not getting to see her daughter necessarily grow into the woman she's becoming, and things like that. We get a lot of that. We also get a lore drop from an 85-year-old orc who's alive before the Shapers War and all that sort of stuff. So you kind of got to see the moments where the Loy family found the stuff in the earth that would allow them to fight against the god. Then Belair shows up bringing the paint. Everybody's kind of unsure why. And then there's kind of questions about, like, why would Thiazi have given this to you? Because Hal doesn't know that Thiazi was dealing with Belair, and Belair like found him objects and did stuff like that. He doesn't know about their relationship, so there's some questions. Belair also knows that there's some sort of like illusion magic with the paint. but doesn't like know that it's hiding a spell or something. So there's questions around the paint. Then we jump to Murray and Azune meeting up. They exchange what they've learned, like Primus Taconis of being at the school, the fact that they're trying to oust the current dean, or really already have, and trying to kind of take over that aspect. Well, they also know that the guard that Azune is part of also has people coming in trying to sort of take over things. It's at this point that because, well, Murray still hasn't slept at this point, she gets a level of exhaustion. They decide that they should try to find some of the other people and go discuss things with them, so they tried to head to where they knew Thimble and company were going, which is where the Crow's Keepers hang out. Then we move to Tayor, who is now at the tailor's where he was sent to get fitted by the Halovars. He rolls a perception and notices something off with the scent, reminds him of like a pentagram out on the battlefield from long ago. During their dialogue, the twins, the tailors, notice the pouch and they put together why he's here, and then he's hit with double hold person, fails both wisdom saves, and well, things are not looking good. The last thing we hear before we go away from Tayor is one of the twins telling the other one to grab the shears. We fast forward time to several hours later when Wick and Tyranny show up. They knock, they engage with one of the twins and explain that, hey, this was a sort of a mistake. We're here to take Tayor. The twins are like, what do you mean? You sent him here. He's not gonna be ready until the morning. They keep implying like he's not going to be ready until the morning. And they're like, no, whatever you're doing, stop doing it. We're here to take him now. And it said that it was just in the nick of time. They convinced the twins by Tyranny deceiving them into saying that this power, the order came from above them. We then find out as Tayor kind of wakes up out of this whole person that they've been cutting his shadow with the shears. They're cutting his shadow. Tayor is very groggy, he's stumbling, he's poisoned, he has the condition, and that leads to Wick using Lesser Restoration, which causes all of his filament tattoos to glow. This part was a lot of fun. It was a blast. There was a lot of really comedic relief between them, good role playing all around. The Wick Tyranny twins thing was great. We then swap back to Thimble and company after the fight when they run into Julian, because they're all heading to Hal's house. There's a very tense moment between Thimble and Julian. He ends up grabbing her wing when she tries to go away. He calls her basically beneath him and all sorts of stuff like that. But the important part is that Julian recognizes Octus's voice. Octus is still disguised at this point, but his voice isn't hidden. Julian then asks Velas if she has seen Octus, to which she says no. Julian says that he's believed to be in danger and to let him know if she does, and then he moves away. Secretly though, he kind of loitered about, hidden, and listened in. The crew minus Julian, who is hiding nearby, continue to talk for a bit when Cadigan and Thimble decide to head inside because they want to try to look for Tayor. Outside, we have Octus, whose disguise now fades, talking to Velas. Velas is very interested in Pin, his fox sort of put back together body part familiar, and she's really asking, could he do it again? That sort of thing. She's very intrigued by it. It's at this point that Julian approaches. He then convinces Octus to go talk to Lady Aranessa. We once again do a time jump at Hal's house, and now we have Hal, Taisha, Thimble, and Cadigan all inside. Taisha is asking where Octus is. They explain that Octus went with Julian. She gets upset. She turns into a wolf. She tries to nip at Thimble flying in the air, not really trying to hit her, and then she runs off trying to find Octus. Then we jump to Azune and Murray, who are now at the remnants of the fight that Thimble had with the Crow Keepers and Solomon. They learn from asking around that Velas is the one who killed those men, and then they decide to head to Hal's house as well. Then Tayor, Wick, and Tyranny show up, and they basically explain what happened to Tayor. Wick and Tyranny, however, kind of keep under wraps everything that they have found out, just so they found out that things aren't what they seemed and that they've been deceived, or rather Wick has been deceived by his family for his whole life. Then Tayor is filled in about the whole Casimir and Sid thing. He finds out his brother isn't a part of this terrible plan to thwart the saving of Thiazi, and that makes him feel good, but now he knows that his brother ran off and was chased by Casimir and his goons. At this point, Hal wonders if him and his family are safe. He goes up to the roof to try to find out if other people have kind of followed them here to the house. While he's up there, he ends up going to his brother's blade that he got back in episode 1. He lifts it. It's talked about how he hasn't really lifted a blade in a long time. It feels heavy in his hands, but that his brother wielded it very well.
And you begin to look at a sword forged for a long ago war by the Loy family. This is the Liar's Blade.
Turning out to be the Liar's Blade, made by the Loy's family. It has a mask and a tongue sticking out on it, and apparently it's going to be a pretty cool weapon. There's also a lot of emphasis at this point that most of the people downstairs aren't safe in the city anymore, which is foreshadowing to the fact that they're going to leave. Thimble wants to chase after Casimir and get revenge. Tayor wants that too, but also to get his brother. Cadigan wants to go after them as well and commits to that, but he's also very familiar with the wilds, can be sort of a guide. And then Wick and Tyranny are basically on the run. So like, hey, can we please come with you? Tayor Tayor is like, I pledged to him because he saved my life. I'm in his debt until it is paid. Thimble's like, I don't really want you to come. I don't think you're good. Your family might be behind this, all sorts of stuff. But then she gets a very specific memory sort of, what would Thiazi say in this moment? What did he believe in?
Thiazi believed in two things. There was always hope that people might turn and choose a better path, even if it was hard. And he also believed if you had a rich kid in your pocket to help pave the way, that is not a ticket you throw out.
And so she allows them to come. Around this time, Cadigan sets a very dark tone for what it's going to be like traveling out in the wild and heading north.
Any of you been in the wild lately? Because let me tell you something. It's not what you think. And you had better prepare yourselves.
And it's at that moment we find out the 5 people for the soldiers' table. So it was all of those people minus Hal and Azune who decide to stay. Thimble, Cadigan, Wick, Tyranny, and Tayor are the 5 going to the soldiers' table who will be missing in episode 4, but they'll be back after that. Then we move to Valus, Octus, and Julian, who are arriving at the Davanos estate. They meet Julian's father, they go in, they talk to Lady Aranessa. Valus is outside at some point and notices something. She has this connection with Taisha, who is running towards them as a wolf. She got a scent. They have this sort of moment. There's a connection there, which is going to be tied to the fact that, remember, Valus is tied to a dead god who is kind of the god of life or nature and that sort of thing. And then you have a druid. And so there's going to be some sort of connection there. She's been hearing, the songbird and all that sort of stuff. So they're going to be brought together at this point as Taisha is running towards that location. And that's where Octus is as well, which is her overall goal. Moving back inside, they're questioning Octus. They're wondering, what does he know about what happened with Thiazi, his family, things like that, a caravan. They want to know what's going on. It's around this time we learn that there are 2 castles that are kind of in between the realms. One is halfway between like where they are in Death, and the other one is between here in Fairy. Fairy, of course, was closed, we learned, because it was almost destroyed because none of the souls can actually go into like the afterlife. Like they're kind of in this purgatory place and they're filling up the realm underneath, like behind the veil, because they have no place to go. The Taconis one is the one that's kind of towards Death, and it's escaping me the other one. Somebody throw it in the comments. Then in an interesting turn of events, Valus and Julian kind of have a moment. Like he gets soft. For the first time, we see Julian kind of let that guard down and not be what he has been. And in a kind of weird way that it didn't make too much sense to me, he was like, I feel I can trust you. She's like, I feel I can trust you too. But then I'm like, she just lied to you about not seeing Octus. Like, I don't understand. But either way, they have that moment. And then the crazy stuff happens. Brennan kind of guides her to using her divine sense, and she senses a curse on Julian. Not only that though, but she sees hundreds of specters just beyond the veil in this very area. And then Julian's father walks out, calls out to them, and then we get a freaking like Mortal Kombat level execution.
A hand from an invisible figure reaches forward as the invisibility is dropped, and a black-clad member of House Taconis reaches their hand up immaterially through the skin under his jaw, reaches inside his head, and pulls his skull out of his head immaterially. Letting go, it becomes corporeal again, and suddenly the upper half of his spinal cord and skull is out in front of the flesh of his head, and he dies instantly, collapsing to the ground.
It was insane. We immediately jump into Aranessa and Octus still talking when 6 cloaked figures walk in. One ends up being his brother, Octus's brother, Ethrend, and he basically is like, hey, tie him down, open him up, we're gonna put this stone where it belongs, and they have the black stone. The one that Valus is after and the one that was stolen. The other cloaked figures appear to be ghouls that are under the control of Ethrend. Oh, and let's not forget that they opened this sort of sequence up by putting silence on that room, so Octus can't do anything, and neither can Lady Aranessa when it comes to spells or communicating.
He looks speaking in silence.
And that's where it ended. That is the recap of episode 3 of Critical Role Campaign 4. If you made it this far, thank you all so much for watching. Make sure to, again, subscribe to the channel, give this video a thumbs up, leave a comment down below to help get more of this in your algorithm and to help me. If you want to support me making content just like this, please consider becoming a member here on YouTube or heading over to my Patreon and subscribing there. Thank you again, and until next time, good luck in your adventures.